Excellencies, dear colleagues and partners, welcome to the side event for the 2021 United Nations High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development. This side event will feature good practices in South-South and triangular cooperation for sustainable development in small island developing states, advancing SAMOA pathway and achieving sustainable recovery. This is led by the Permanent Mission of Antigua and Barbuda to the United Nations and chair of the Alliance of Small Island States, AOSIS, with the UN Office of the High Representative for the Least Developed Countries, Landlocked Developing Countries, and Small Island Developing States, UNOHRLLS, and United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation. Colleagues, there is a growing consensus that the importance of South-South and triangular cooperation is contributing to the pursuit of sustainable development in the developing countries. Knowledge sharing and exchange of relevant solutions and technologies has been the center of South-South cooperation. Southern countries, small island developing states included, have accumulated considerable experience in their own developing processes, some of which have been shared with others. Many are still seeking to replicate and scale up. To support such efforts, our office, UNOSSC, together with member states, all UN agencies, and development partners, has been actively documenting, sharing, promoting and lessons learned for mutual learning purpose and for deepening South cooperation. 3 volumes of good practices have already been published during the past 5 years. And in addition, a number of special issues focusing on thematic areas altogether bring over 600 good practices that cover all SDGs to show the potential of South-South cooperation and to demonstrate the vision that knowledge has no boundaries, knowledge has no hierarchy. It's shared asset for all for sustainable development. Today, we're very happy to launch together with you all the special edition focusing on the small island developing states, featuring close to 50 development solutions through South-South cooperation generated by SIDS, with SIDS, and for addressing SIDS-specific development challenges in implementing of the SDGs and SAMOA pathway. First, I have the great honor to invite for opening remarks by His Excellency Dr. Walton Webson, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary and Permanent Representative of Antigua and Barbuda to the United States. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I trust you can hear me.
94.
USG, Ambassador Rattray, UNOSSC Director,
93.
Excellencies, colleagues. Thank you for this opportunity to share some thoughts on South-South cooperation best practices. South-South cooperation is integral for the sustainable development of SIDS. As you all are aware, SIDS faces multiple capacity constraints due to our size, remoteness, and exposure to external shocks. 1 second, I've been asked to start my video. Okay.
Yes,
great.
that would be great.
I think you can see me now. The SAMOA pathway placed particular emphasis on partnership for SIDS. Therefore, the promotion—
Sorry, Aubrey, this is Courtney. We can't see you actually.
Okay, can you now?
No.
Huh. All right, hold on. Huh.
Maybe you can stop your video and start again, sir?
Okay. Okay, hold on. Let me ask somebody to. Okay. All right. So I'll try and start it again now.
You're still not showing.
Okay. I have just done it again. Still,
Yeah, but it's not working.
I don't know why. The video is not working. You want to come and check something here?
The moderator may have to put you at the back of the line and you may not even speak today at all. So you better get it together.
Yeah, I think we will. A couple of minutes for this, Ambassador, is that all right?
Oh, I think, yeah, I think his connection is down. So,
Oh, okay. Let's see if we can come back in 1 minute. If not, maybe with your permission, Mr. Rattray, can we maybe shuffle the order a little bit and ask you for the opening remarks?
Okay, Madam Moderator, I feel bad for my friend Aubrey that I'm taking his spot, but
Yeah, I
so
have
goes.
I have to go to the meeting.
exactly. We can, again, invite him for the opening remarks whenever the connection is fixed. Now I have the honor to introduce Mr. Courtney Rattray, newly appointed Under Secretary General and High Representative for the least developed countries, landlocked developing countries, and small island developing states. Before taking this role, Ambassador Rattray served as Jamaica's permanent representative to the UN. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me begin by acknowledging the presence of His Excellency Secretary Andrew Yatilman, Minister of Environment, Climate Change and Environment Management from the Federated States of Micronesia, my good friend and former colleague, His Excellency Walton, quote unquote, Aubrey Webson, who, as you just said, Madam Moderator, is the PR of Antigua and Barbuda, current chair of AOSIS. His Excellency Ambassador Solo Mara, Secretary General of the Pacific Islands Development Forum, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, all colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, let me say what a great pleasure it is to join this important gathering today, which seeks to shine light on some of the good practices in South-South cooperation and SIDS, and highlight their catalytic role in supporting the SDGs, including, I should add, in the context of COVID-19 and our collective recovery efforts. I wish also to thank the UN Office for South-South Cooperation for collaborating with my office on this seminal work. I'd also like to acknowledge the contributions from member states, UN entities, intergovernmental organizations, and other development partners, without which this work would not be a success. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, SIDS have been a formidable negotiating force on the international stage at a scale that far exceeds their size. Working together, they have led major international breakthroughs on some of our most pressing global concerns, from climate change to oceans and the SDGs. SIDS are also at the forefront of practical action on the ground, leading the implementation of some innovative practices. It is because SIDS are at the front lines of some of the most pressing global issues that they are spawning a wide range of development solutions, some of which are addressing transnational development challenges. However, many of these South-grown development solutions need to be nurtured, they need to be promoted, scaled up, and implemented by different SIDS as nations cooperate and learn from each other. Ladies and gentlemen, the lack of inter-SIDS exchanges to learn from each other has been raised in various fora. Accelerating the exchange of this knowledge is an important and dynamic pillar of South-South and triangular cooperation, and is necessary to increase the reach of the increasing experience in SIDS-grown, homegrown development processes. The publication entitled Good Practices in South-South and Triangular Cooperation for Sustainable Development in SIDS, Advancing the SAMOA Pathway, and achieving sustainable recovery is indeed but one of the steps in the right direction. But more needs to be done to spur the development, growth, and exchange of effective South-South and triangular practices and innovative development solutions in as many areas confronting SIDS as possible, such as climate change, sustainable energy, sustainable transport, and DRR, disaster risk reduction. This requires a concerted effort to chart a deliberate course that will continue to seek to obtain, shape, and share good practices that illustrate the central tenets of effective South-South and triangular cooperation. These constitute practices that address transnational development challenges, highlight solutions that have been piloted and scaled up, and that have tangible development outcomes. The extent to which these efforts could catalyze transformational change will depend in part on how enabling the environment is at the local, regional, and at the global level. This underscores the need for continued financial and technical support for SIDS in order to stimulate and nurture homegrown South-South solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, this important work should grow unfettered to facilitate and promote peer learning and collective efforts among SIDS and their development partners. It should be a source of inspiration for all countries, great and small, to develop and share innovative solutions to the most pressing challenges that confront us. So, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to assure you that my office, the OHRLLS, stands ready to support SIDS in ensuring the good work that SIDS are doing reaches other members of the development community. This is also in keeping with commitments made in the Multi-Country Office Implementation Roadmap developed by the UN Sustainable Development Group to foster South-South cooperation and cross-regional learning through the mapping and sharing of good practices that are relevant for all SIDS. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for this very inspiring opening remarks and for the very strong commitment. It is indeed an honor to partner with your office. Now I have the honor to invite the Director Interim of United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation, Mr. Adel Abdulatif, to also deliver opening remarks.
Thank you, Grace. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you all to the 2021 UN-OHRLLS High-Level Political Forum side event on good practices in South-South and triangular cooperation for sustainable development in small island developing states, advancing SAMOA pathway and achieving sustainable recovery. I would like at the start to thank His Excellency Dr. Walton Webson, Permanent Representative of Antigua and Barbuda and Chair of the Alliance of Small Island States for co-organizing this event with us. And I would like also to seize this opportunity to congratulate Mr. Courtney Rattray for his appointment as High Representative for the least developed countries, landlocked developing countries, and small island developing states. I look forward to working closely with you, and I would like to extend our special thanks to your team at OHRLLS for the partnership on this event and their efforts in jointly developing the publication that we are launching today at this side event. Small island developing states, SIDS aggregate population is 65 million. This group faces unique social, economic, and environmental challenges. They are the most vulnerable among developing countries, particularly to climate change and biodiversity challenges. Even upper middle income SIDS are 73% more vulnerable than other upper middle income countries. Economic growth, human development, and vulnerability indicators point to specific challenges facing SIDS and suggest that new development solutions and approaches are needed to ensure sustainable development and prosperity of their people. While SIDS have been able to contain the health consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic, they are among the worst hit developing economies in economic and fiscal terms, In 2020, their GDP dropped by 6.9% as compared to 4.08% in all other developing countries. This is mainly due to global contractions in two ocean economy sectors, coastal tourism and fisheries. The crisis is amplified by SIDS structural vulnerabilities, such as over-reliance on one or two economic sectors, high fiscal deficits and public debt levels, and significant constraints to the mobilization of finance, both public and private. Ladies and gentlemen, the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation is pleased to partner with UN-OHRLLS in producing this publication that is mapping and compiling the good practices with focus on SIDS. The special edition of good practices demonstrate the tangible results achieved through South-South cooperation, not only from inter-region, but also with the broader developing countries, illustrating contributions towards advancing SAMOA pathway and achieving the SDGs. The publication aims to facilitate and promote peer learning and collective efforts among SIDS and their development. The sharing of such good practices will enable concrete exchanges of solutions, expertise, and technologies, and fostering partnerships among southern countries. The United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation will continue to enrich and expand its large database on South and Triangular cooperation good practices in order to make them accessible to all countries in the Global South. In order to ensure that the good practices in this special edition reaches a wider audience, all of them will be shared on South-South Galaxy, a digital global knowledge sharing and partnership brokering platform. South-South Galaxy also connects solution providers and with solution seekers and facilitate cross-country and cross-regional partnerships and collaborations. I think, Grace, we have to postpone the launch now of the publication and the video to permit His Excellency Dr. Walton Oxen to make his statement. I'm right?
Yes, Adele, I think that would be a good idea. We can, yeah, we hope that the technical access issue can be fixed very soon.
Yeah. So, and I would like to welcome him virtually to the meeting, you know, and we would have liked, of course, that you start the meeting, Your Excellency, but we will end this opening session with your statement, and then we will move after that as Grace will guide us, you know, to have the launch of the publication. Over to you, Grace.
101.
Sure, thank you very much. And colleagues, let me know once the ambassador is able to join us, okay?
I'm here.
Yes,
I'm here.
yes, he's already there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So now we can, yes, let's, now I have the honor again to invite His Excellency Ambassador Webson to give us opening remarks. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I guess you can hear me now, right?
Very well, and we can see you very clearly.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. Well, my apologies. I am not sure what happened just now, but sometimes technology has a mind of its own. And thanks to my good friend, Ambassador Rattray, USG Rattray, for stepping in and doing what he always does so efficiently and effectively. So thank you so much. Colleagues, Excellencies, South-South cooperation is integral for the sustainable development of SIDS. As we all know, and we all are aware, SIDS faces multiple capacity constraints due to our size, remoteness, and our exposure to external shocks. The SAMOA pathway placed significant and particular emphasis on partnerships for SIDS. Therefore, the promotion of effective partnership is at the core of the success of the SAMOA pathway. While in the past, we as SIDS have relied on traditional North-South partnerships and partnerships within the UN system the increase in partnerships with countries from the South is an added advantage to our efforts for development. During the past 10 years or so, we have seen the growth of commitment to SIDS from the South. And while we are advocates that South-South partnerships should not be a replacement for North-South partnership, but rather be seen as a complement to the traditional North-South partnership, it is important to highlight these new partnerships that are very successful stories for countries, but are also aiding us in our recovery for many, many of us. The islands from the South, these partnerships are effective
100.
and proved very effective in the COVID-19 recovery program, resulting to help us in cushioning a little bit the economic shock that we are all facing. The launch of the good practices in the South-South and Triangular Cooperation for Sustainable Development in SIDS, advancing SAMOA pathway, achieving sustainable recovery is for us timely as it provides a guide to the cooperation of countries of the South with each other and with SIDS. It can also be used as a measure for increased cooperation with our traditional development partners when at a time when we are concerned about the decline in assistance to SIDS, especially high and middle income SIDS. Colleagues, excellencies, South-South cooperation can also be useful in steering the direction of triangular cooperation. The pandemic is a prime example as to why the South-South cooperation is important to SIDS, as it was countries from the South that responded first to the needs and challenges of SIDS during the outbreak. These countries did so without question and without delay. As we move further, colleagues, into the South-South cooperation under my chairmanship of AOSIS, my desire is to ensure that AOSIS is strengthened by increasing capacity building initiatives with our Southern partners who understands the unique
100.
challenges we face as developing countries. Our members also intend to share good practices and lessons
99.
learned with other developing countries. I am sure that lessons can be learned in our approach to disaster preparedness due to the negative effects that climate change has on our small states. We have also successes to share in tourism industry and can share our experiences on this with others. What I wish to impart here, my friends, is that South-South cooperation is a two-way street, a benefit for all countries of the South with particular focus on SIDS. I thank you for this opportunity to share some thoughts. Thank you, and we finally were able to get through with the technology. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for this very important remarks and for emphasizing the special added value for South-South cooperation, for its steering the triangular cooperation, for the commitment and expectations from AOSIS for more actions to strengthen the capacity and to follow up just the publication. Thank you, this distinguished panel of opening remarks. And following that, I think it's time for us to look at this exciting publication In today's world, we are all go over the cloud. You can't feel in your hand the weight of this printed copy of the report, but the intellectual weight and development value of it will only be amplified. Let's watch the video to launch the publication.
South-South and triangular cooperation has been recognized for its catalytic role and complementary value in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, and recently in COVID-19 response and recovery efforts. It has gained prominence among developing countries who are increasingly recognizing that South-South knowledge exchanges and sharing of good practices that are replicable and adaptable offer viable pathways to address common challenges and accelerate progress in the achievement of the SDGs. Over the past decades, small island developing states have accumulated considerable experience in their own development processes, which have been shared with other developing countries. UNOSSC and UN-OHRLLS have produced a special volume of good practices with a focus on small island developing states, which compiles good practices relevant to the implementation of the SDGs and the SAMOA pathway, while spotlighting the role of South-South cooperation in supporting sustainable development. The publication seeks to facilitate and promote peer learning and collective efforts among small island developing states and their development partners in addressing development challenges and building resilience. In this publication, 38 countries from 3 geographical regions of the Caribbean, the Pacific, and the Atlantic, Indian Ocean, and the South China Sea share their unique social, economic, and environmental challenges. For instance, in the Caribbean, grants provided by the United Arab Emirates Caribbean Renewable Energy Fund is increasing the use and resilience of renewable energy applications in 16 countries. In the Pacific region, a project to address the needs of Pacific Island states relating to e-readiness as well as ICT has harmonized and promoted closer collaboration on telecommunication policies, legislation, strategies, and regulations. In the Atlantic Ocean, following exchanges and knowledge transfer from Uruguay, Cabo Verde established a national care system, a new pillar of social protection that recognizes and values women's unpaid work and focuses on rights and care-dependent persons. This publication seeks to promote South-South and triangular cooperation by documenting and sharing good practices in a systemic manner. These good practices are also available on South-South Galaxy, the digital knowledge sharing and partnership brokering platform, which enables Southern partners to access information and resources, share good practices, and connect with other members for partnership opportunities. Let us come together to share our knowledge, expertise, and solutions towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals.
May I invite a round of applause for this publication to be launched? Okay, colleagues and participants, now let's move on to the second segment of today's event. Now we have seen the publication with the overview, but we're all very interested to learn from the member states who have submitted and shared those good solutions with us. And we will be able to mutually inspire each other and hopefully to take those solutions to an upper scale to have better and larger impact. Now, I have the honor to first introduce our distinguished SIDS representatives from the government. First to speak, I would like to introduce His Excellency Secretary Andrew Yatilman. He's the Minister for Environment, Climate Change, and Emergency Management of the Federated States of Micronesia. Due to the awkward time difference, he's unable to participate in person, but His Excellency has kindly provided a pre-recorded video message, which will highlight the climate early warning systems in the Pacific Island countries. This is a project implemented by UNDP and supported by the UN-India Development Partnership Trust Fund, managed by UNOSSC. Now let's hear the message.
His Excellency Prime Minister Gaston Brown, Chair of Alliance of Small Island States, His Excellency Earl Rattray, Under-Secretary General and High-Level Representative, UN-OHRLLS, Mr. Abel Abdelatif, Director, United Nations Office of South-South Cooperation, distinguished representatives of Jamaica and Singapore, Ms. Chofi Tang, AIS Group, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored to be part of the launching of the publication Good Practices in South-South and Triangular Cooperation for Sustainable Development in SIDS, Advancing SAMOA Pathway and Achieving Sustainable Recovery. Let me start by thanking the United Nations Office of South-South Cooperation and the United Nations Office of the High Representative for the Least Developing Countries, Landlocked Developing Countries, and Small Island Developing States for organizing this important and timely event. This is a great opportunity to demonstrate how South-South cooperation can be a game changer for SIDS, showing a path to overcome common challenges by joining efforts, sharing knowledge, and learning from each other. As SIDS, many of us occupy some of the smallest habitable land areas on Earth, and we are vulnerable to natural and human-induced disturbance. With only 3.5% of SIDS being land and the remaining 96.5% being ocean, it goes without saying that we, SIDS, face particular challenges and are extremely vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. We experience the consequences of intensified extreme weather events, rising sea levels, and ocean acidification, exacerbated by the degradation and depletion of our natural capital, which has sustained our livelihoods and economies for so long. Just to share a few numbers from the Pacific SIDS, extreme weather events have affected more than 9.2 million people in the region since 1950. The World Bank estimates that climate change could push an additional 132 million people into extreme poverty by 2030. Many Pacific Island countries are likely to encounter greater vulnerability, with many of them possibly even becoming uninhabitable. When months of complete drought come, as many of us are experiencing even now, the suffering that takes place would be hard to believe by those who hold fond notions of paradise in the Pacific. We therefore welcome the inclusion of the Joint Agency Pacific Climate Change Migration and Human Security Program within the report. The program seeks to protect and empower communities adversely affected by climate change and disasters in the Pacific region by supporting the development of regional policy, strengthening the governance of labor migration, and enhancing data and evidence to support policy development. FSM has engaged in the regional policy dialogue and will be working closely with IOM in FSM to host the national consultation to fully capture the diverse perspectives of this sensitive issue and inform any regional level work. The recent challenges posed by COVID-19 have hit Pacific SIDS hard on many fronts, including tourism, one of the most affected economic areas since the outbreak of the pandemic, and one of the region's main sources of income. International arrivals dropped 47% only in the first 4 months of 2020, according to WTO. In view of these and other challenges, more than ever, we need climate change adaptation measures to strengthen our capacity to anticipate and prevent major catastrophes. Early warning systems are crucial to contribute to reduction in the vulnerability to variability and long-term changes in Pacific countries. But no one can accelerate progress towards sustainable development by working alone. Therefore, the support from our Southern partners through South-South cooperation becomes key. And this is why I would like to highlight the project Climate Early Warning Systems in Pacific Island countries under the India UN Development Partnership Trust Fund, managed by UNOSSC. Let me express the very sincere gratitude of all the participating SIDS members in this project to the UNOSSC, and our special thanks, of course, go to the Government of India for its spirit of South-South solidarity, clearly demonstrated through this trust fund that has 74% of its portfolio focusing on SIDS, supporting SDG-focused initiatives on the ground. The climate early warning systems in the Pacific Island countries under the India UN Fund support 7 Pacific SIDS, namely the Cook Islands, Fiji, Kiribati, Marshall Islands, Nauru, Solomon Islands, Tonga, and finally my country, the Federated States of Micronesia. Special appreciation goes to UNDP, particularly to its Pacific office in Fiji, for the successful implementation of the project. Through the support of the ICLUS project, FSM was fortunate to have 4 personnel, 2 from a state-run water and sanitation outfit, and 2 from the National Water Services, participated in the 2-month training in Roorkee, India. The training was mutually beneficial, particularly from a hydrology perspective, as the training reinforced the importance of water and how small islands such as ours, under the threat of climate change, can take proactive measures to ensure that this life-saving and sustaining resource is available unhindered and unpolluted to our future generations. Beyond providing the hardware to establish a multi-country climate early warning system, the project put in practice key South-South cooperation principles. Let me share with you a few of them, together with some highlights of the project. It enabled expertise and experience sharing, as 17 hydrologists from 7 participating countries participated in a tailor-made 2-month training at the National Institute for Hydrology in Roorkee, India in 2018. Participants were introduced to the latest hydrology techniques for addressing water shortages and contamination issues. They learned not only from Indian experiences, but also shared success stories and lessons from the Pacific Island countries. It built local capacities, as 40 Pacific journalists participated in a training in Nandi, Fiji, on reporting on climate change-focused issues. Lastly, in keeping with the principle of leaving no one behind, the project conducted stakeholder consultations in remote communities in Solomon Islands that included communicating with and receiving feedback from women and other marginalized and vulnerable groups, such as youth and people with disabilities. The findings informed future project activities, including equal training opportunities for both male and female national meteorologists and hydrologists. Ladies and gentlemen, this project is a concrete example of the added value of South-South cooperation, particularly for SIDS, on key areas such as disaster preparedness, response and recovery, and on SDG 13 in general. We see that the countries from the South have valuable resources and experiences to share in the areas of climate and hydrology early warning systems, and that South-South cooperation is the platform that enables us to share our knowledge and improve our capacities. As we embark on the decade of action, collective action and global solidarity must be on top of our agendas if we want to achieve the SDGs. The publication being launched today should inspire us about the power of South-South cooperation for inclusive transformation and accelerated progress towards the SDGs and the Small Island Developing States Accelerated Modalities of Action, better known as the SAMOA pathway. I firmly believe that only by working together, we will achieve sustainable development for all, including for the SIDS. I am grateful for this opportunity to speak at this event of such importance, and I do hope that these remarks and this event itself will not simply be politely acknowledged and then be forgotten. It is a long way from New York and at odd hours for some of us to join this event, in fact, halfway around the globe. It would be quite disappointing to end our event without having achieved at least a convincing show of support from others for these kinds of projects. I am sure all will agree the effort was worth it. If we encourage more partners to take up these kinds of initiatives like India has done and pursue the principles advanced through South-South cooperation. Let me conclude now by thanking once again for the opportunity to highlight this excellent South-South cooperation experience and by congratulating the organizers of this successful event. I thank you for your attention.
Grace, you're muted.
Thank you very much, Minister, for this important message. And we heard from you your expectations for expanding support through South-South cooperation for SIDS. And the example you have shown is not only combining early warning system with training, but also you have shown us knowledge is not just a two-way traffic. It is a multidimensional overpass highway bridge connecting all the 7 participating SIDS with India and among themselves and leveraging support from UN system as well. Thank you very much. Now, following that, I have the honor to introduce His Excellency Ambassador Saulo Mara, Secretary General of the Pacific Island Development Forum. Due to the time difference again, His Excellency has also shared with us a recorded video message will highlight PIDF's South-South good practices related to solarization. Now let's hear the message.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Ambula Vinaka and warm greetings from the Pacific Islands Development Forum. Let me at the outset congratulate the UN Office on South-South Cooperation on the launch of this publication on good practices on South-South and triangular cooperation for sustainable development in SIDS. I am delighted to briefly share PIDF's good practices in South-South cooperation that has been featured in this report and how they are contributing to the Sustainable Development Agenda and the SAMOA pathway in the Pacific region. As you all know, the PIDF is the youngest regional organization in the Pacific and was formed as a PSIDS partnership platform during the formulation of the 2030 Agenda, the SAMOA pathway, and the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. The tenets of these global frameworks are therefore embedded in the organization's DNA. The PIDF was also designed with South-South cooperation in mind. One of its functions, as set out in its charter, is to serve as the Pacific regional platform for the South-South cooperation. We have built strong partnership with the UN Office for South-South cooperation and have implemented activities with and accessed funding from the Global South partners. In actively promoting South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation amongst Pacific SIDS, the PIDF has supported the establishment of the Sub-Regional Office in Suva in 2019, which was a significant outcome of the Pacific Regional Consultation on South-South Cooperation in March of the same year. Our strategic approach to partnership is threefold. First, we aim to, 1, foster multi-stakeholder engagement. 2, we leverage the comparative advantages of South-South cooperation. And thirdly, we develop inter-regional and intra-regional SIDS partnership to enhance the implementation of SDGs and build climate resilience in Pacific Island countries. By harnessing the expertise and resources of the private sector, the normative leadership of the public sector, and the successful delivery mechanism of civil society organizations, we are able to promote and foster a holistic approach to sustainable blue-green development in Pacific Island communities. Our flagship solar energy project is an excellent example of PIDF strategy in action. As the heads of state residences become visibly powered by solar energy, public awareness of the importance of reducing carbon emissions and decreasing reliance on fossil fuels will inevitably grow. This project is funded by the Government of India to benefit 11 PIDF member countries, as well as the PIDF headquarters in Suva. The technical support is provided by Solar Head of State, a non-profit organization, and also brings in Solaria, a private sector partner based in the US, which is donating the solar panels. Each system installed becomes a demonstration project to inspire the adoption of solar energy and other renewable energy technologies. Each country project engages the general public in discussions about the benefits of renewable energy through an effective media campaign and community outreach programs. We have also leveraged the project to improve technical capacity in the development of the renewable energy sector in the Pacific Island region. We are proud with the inclusion of our project, the solarization of heads of states' residences, in this special volume launched today. And that is a piece of very good news at a time when it is really needed. As I speak to you from my home base in Fiji, we are facing our second wave of COVID-19. Pacific Island countries have largely avoided high case numbers, but have suffered greatly from the economic impacts of the pandemic. The global health and economic crisis clearly requires greater international cooperation across a number of areas, from the development of vaccines and treatments to strengthening the robustness and resilience of supply chains, to the coordination of physical and monetary policies and support to SIDS. Economic impacts are enormous, as we all know, as we are facing the most severe recession in nearly a century. The pandemic has also halted progress or caused regression towards some of the SDGs. While we grapple with COVID-19, we must be planning our recovery very carefully. And that recovery must be centered on the principle of sustainable development. PIDF's role in the recovery will be guided by its strategic approach and shaped by the value it places on partnerships as the most efficient mechanism for achieving sustainable and inclusive development. For the Pacific Island region, this is to rebuild back stronger on the principles of sustainable green-blue growth. Once again, congratulations on the launch of this important publication, and I thank you all for your attention. Renata. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you for sharing with us the good practice, but also we would like to thank PIDF, not only cooperating through South-South cooperation projects, but also providing through human resource support to the UN Office for South-South Cooperation on the overall South-South agenda. Thank you very much. Now, with great joy, let me introduce Ms. Joffrey Tang, Deputy Permanent Representative at the Permanent Mission of the Singapore to the United Nations. We all know Singapore has been actively supporting South-South cooperation, and Ms. Tan, we look forward to your remarks and your presentation on several of Singapore's South-South cooperation good practices in support of other developing countries. Thank you, Ms. Tan. The floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Grace. And first of all, thank you very much for inviting Singapore to make this contribution during this side event, which is really obviously very important. Let me just start by thanking the opening speakers, Ambassador Webson of Antigua and Barbuda, the new USG, Ambassador Courtney Rattray, whom we're very, very happy to see back in this new role, and Mr. Ado Abdul Latif, the Director of the UNOSSC. I also just want to say briefly that the two statements we heard by the Minister of Environment from FSM and from Ambassador Mara of the PIDF were really, I think, very important and very thought-provoking statements that I think as SIDS were very, very useful for us to hear, and of the projects that they described. So just wanted to say that. Let me just congratulate the UNOSSC and the UN-OHRLLS for the launch of this publication, which Singapore was pleased to contribute several submissions to. It really is very timely and useful. And I think really because it provides a compendium of lessons learned, experiences and knowledge that address the many long-term challenges that SIDS face, and which I think will be useful in helping our collective recovery from COVID-19. Now, I mean, we all know that COVID-19 has derailed the progress of SDGs globally, but I think it's also very clear that SIDS have been the hardest hit. Our small size and open economies make us inherently vulnerable to such external shocks. And beyond that, really, SIDS have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19 in almost all aspects, whether it's been disruptions in trade flows, including for essential goods and medical supplies, or whether it's been border closures and travel restrictions that have devastated our tourism industries. So I think, now as we're entering, I don't want to say a post-COVID world, but certainly a new normal where we're going to have to live with COVID in our midst, I think it's critical that we as SIDS support one another in our recovery efforts. And in particular, we need to forge durable and enduring partnerships to help us manage the long-term impact that COVID-19 has inflicted on all our societies and economies. So I just want to highlight from Singapore's perspective, 3 key elements of successful South-South cooperation among SIDS, and I'll talk very briefly about Singapore's efforts and experiences in these areas. So the first element is successful cooperation is predicated on placing people at the forefront of development. Now, the SAMOA pathway recognizes that people are the greatest resource in building resilient societies and economies. For most SIDS, including Singapore, people are often our most important resource. In Singapore's case, people are our only resource. So it's imperative that our cooperation and capacity building efforts focus on elevating the skills and capabilities of individuals. Singapore's first Prime Minister, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, very famously said, and I'm probably misquoting him slightly, but the sentiment of what he said was that it is far more useful to teach a person to fish than it is to give that person a fish. Now, that philosophy has underpinned our whole technical assistance program and capacity building efforts going forward. And that's really something that we have focused on in the Singapore Cooperation Program, which is our flagship technical assistance program that focuses on human capital development. It's really because we believe that this is a really vital component for economic and social progress. So leveraging on the complementarities of the SCP, in 2019, 2 years ago now, we launched the Singapore Partnership for the SAMOA Pathway, which really, its objective was to provide SIDS with priority placement in all SCP courses and customized programs. And I'm very happy to say that we've had over 8,000 officials from SIDS that have participated in these programs. So that's something that we're very happy with. Now, the second element that we think is very important for South-South cooperation is that cooperation must remain relevant to the evolving needs and priorities of SIDS. For example, take climate change, which has long been an existential threat for all SIDS. But the emergence of more frequent and extreme weather events, food shortages, and new diseases have exacerbated these vulnerabilities at a time when we're reeling from the impact of COVID-19. So what have we done from Singapore's perspective? 3 years ago now, in 2018, we launched a climate action package, the CAP, which aims to support capacity building in key areas under SDG 13 on climate action. Some of these areas are disaster risk reduction, flood management, and long-term mitigation and adaptation strategies. So far, about 1/5 of the participants in our CAP courses have been from SIDS, and we're hoping that in the coming years, that percentage of participation by SIDS will increase. We're also regularly reviewing and customizing our CAP courses to make sure that they remain relevant. We've partnered with the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction to run a program for the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency. It was on the topic of understanding risk management and risk financing for disaster resilience. And last year, we conducted a workshop on enhancing nationally determined contributions, which was really intended to guide countries in their application of agreed UNFCCC reporting guidelines, as well as in the accounting and tracking of the progress of their NDCs. I mean, from Singapore's perspective, we really do believe that these kinds of platforms where SIDS can share our experiences and lessons learned and hear from other SIDS who face similar challenges, that these platforms are important because they help us build adaptability and resilience into our cooperation with each other. The third element that I wanted to mention briefly is enhancing connectivity, which we think should remain a key priority for South-South cooperation among SIDS. Now, among the 50 least connected economies globally, 37 are SIDS. That's quite a high number. SIDS were also among the countries most affected by the impact of the pandemic on global shipping. And this obviously, as we all know and we're still experiencing, has had serious implications, such as shortages in food and medical supplies in many SIDS. One of the key challenges faced by SIDS is the knowledge gap that has been a significant impediment to their becoming more efficient in running and regulating port and maritime infrastructures. And so from Singapore's perspective, what we thought was important is running leadership training programs. And so our Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore Academy has, for a while now, run these leadership training programs to train and equip maritime leaders with the knowledge and expertise that we think are important to develop national maritime industries and to build robust systems of maritime governance. We're also working with the IMO, the International Maritime Organization, on projects and training programs to disseminate the technical knowledge that's necessary to operate a safe and efficient shipping industry, while obviously complying with international maritime regulations and standards. And one of the examples of these projects is our single window to facilitate trade. We call it the SWIFT project for short. And its objective is to help SIDS and developing countries implement maritime single window systems to streamline port clearance processes and improve efficiency. So I am very conscious that time is short. So let me just wrap up by saying that Singapore's priority is, and we are constantly working to incorporate these three elements: human capital development, relevance to national priorities, and enhancing connectivity in all of our South-South cooperation programs, because we truly believe in the value of capacity building as the best means for SIDS to help each other and to work together. And we're certainly committed to continue lending support to our fellow SIDS through South-South and Triangular cooperation as we all work together to advance our shared interests. So thank you again for the opportunity to share some of Singapore's experience, and do keep up the good work. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tang, for your presentation and for emphasizing the three key principles and directions: people at the center and at the front, evolving and be relevant, and enhancing connectivity, as we all committed as partners to heighten our efforts to support SIDS and South-South cooperation. These are very valuable messages. Thank you very much. And now I have the pleasure to introduce our last special commentator, Ms. Denise Seeley. She is the Chest Affairs Deputy Permanent Representative at the Permanent Mission of Jamaica to the United Nations. So, Ms. Seeley, the floor is yours, and we look forward to hearing from you, your perspective and good practices from your country. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Let me first of all express Jamaica's appreciation to the UNOSSC and the OHRLLS for the opportunity to share Jamaica's practical experience in South-South and Triangular cooperation during this event. I was very pleased to hear the earlier speakers, giving their views on what South-South cooperation means for countries such as Jamaica, themselves being from small island developing states, and I really thank them for that. Now, Jamaica recognizes South-South cooperation as an important complement to international development cooperation, and so we continue to fully support bilateral and multilateral efforts aimed at increasing economic and technical cooperation among the countries of the South, especially for the acceleration and implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals of the 2030 Agenda. We agree with the position taken in the publication that was launched a few minutes ago that a country's sense of national identity, its foreign policy, and its development agenda will indeed shape its attitude towards South-South cooperation. And so we welcome the 47 illustrations of good practices that have emerged through the knowledge exchange manifested by South-South and triangular cooperation with emphasis on SIDS. This is particularly significant as countries like Jamaica are not only beneficiaries, but also are contributors to South-South cooperation. For instance, I can elaborate on a few examples for which Jamaica continues to benefit from South-South cooperation in the areas of health, renewable energy, and climate change. It is well known that Jamaica and the rest of the Caribbean continue to struggle with the overwhelming health, social, and economic burden of overweight, obesity, and NCDs. These diet-related NCDs cause almost 80% of deaths in Jamaica annually. Furthermore, the COVID-19 deaths are higher among persons with NCDs. Chile, PAHO, and CARICOM developed the project Advancing Public Health Policies to address overweight and obesity in Chile and the Caribbean community as a new approach to the delivery of technical cooperation to foster horizontal alliances and cooperation between countries. At this stage, direct technical assistance to Jamaica has taken the form of operationalizing a roadmap for developing and implementing front of package labeling legislation. The front of package labeling legislation is a primary tool for educating consumers of the diet-related risks linked to non-communicable diseases. Good practices such as this facilitates the sharing of experiences from each other in health-related matters, especially during this pandemic. This can contribute to having a healthier population in line with our own national objectives, and as well as achieving our SDGs of having a healthy society. Looking at the issue of renewable energy, Caribbean SIDS have partnered with the United Arab Emirates to reduce energy costs and pollution. Jamaica is currently a project location in the feasibility stage of renewable energy installation. We welcome this kind of partnership as it supports the goals of Jamaica's national energy policy and will also contribute to Jamaica achieving SDG 7. These are all highlighted in your publication, and we really thank you for making note of paying specific attention to these issues. As it relates to climate change, which is a real challenge for the region, we are pleased to partner with the GEF Small Grants Program in a South-South exchange to learn from practical experiences in sustainable aquaponic farming in Mexico. This initiative directly addressed how farmers in Jamaica could adapt technology to improve climate adaptation with regard to extreme drought and rainfall conditions. We're also pleased to note that this project addresses SAMOA pathway priority areas on oceans and seas and food security and nutrition. Now, since the exchange, the Environmental Health Foundation in Jamaica, this is an NGO, has established 4 small-scale aquaponic systems in the rural parishes of the country. Now, the EHF is one of the country's leading NGOs and plays a key role in improving health, the environment, and the education system. Looking at the way forward, Jamaica will remain committed to strengthening and advancing South-South cooperation at all levels. And we do so at the multilateral level in our various groups, such as the Group of 77 and China, within CARICOM, within the Community of Latin America and Caribbean states, as well as within the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States and the Alliance of Small Island Developing States. So we continue to employ triangular cooperation as an avenue as well to support SDG implementation, as seen in our collaboration with Canada and the UN's Secretary General in launching the Financing for Development Initiative in the era of COVID-19 and beyond. In short, this initiative was created to identify and promote concrete financing solutions to the COVID-19 health and development emergencies. Jamaica remains supportive of the need to enhance and strengthen South-South and triangular cooperation. As the pandemic has manifested, we will only be able to recover in a sustainable and meaningful way if there is deliberate and targeted engagement among countries as we look to recover from this devastating period. It is therefore imperative that the international community continue to explore innovative development solutions and best practices generated by small island developing states and within the global South, including by ensuring that they are mainstreamed in the programming of development partners, international financial institutions, United Nations agencies, and other international organizations. Undoubtedly, we must continue to leverage the expertise, knowledge, and resources of the private sector, communities, and citizenry in finding innovative solutions and building resilience. I thank you so very much for the opportunity to share Jamaica's experience this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Ms. Seeley, for sharing Jamaica's perspectives and experiences, and also for calling on more integration of South-South cooperation as a modality into development programming. Thank you very much. And now we have heard from all the special commentators sharing their good practices. And I see in the chat box, the enthusiastic participants are sharing their feedbacks and raising questions of where to read this publication and to connect with partners. And my very efficient team has already addressed all those questions by sharing links and the platform, introducing the platform. So thank you very much. Well, maybe colleagues can formulate more comments and questions. We still have about 10 minutes left for this event. We have, I think that we have heard so many examples of good practices from the member states, but also with support of UN agencies as a strengthened system-wide efforts in support South-South cooperation, called by member states through various resolutions. In this publication, we have examples shared by UN entities such as ACLAC, SCAP, ICAO, ILO, ITO, PAHO, WHO, UNIDO, UNOPS, UNFPA, WFP, I won't name all of them, but there are examples like with support of WHO, Mauritius strengthened its national plan and surveillance program for prevention of communicable diseases and share cross-border agreements, protocols, and data in public health emergencies with neighboring countries. We have examples with support of UNESCO. The Pacific states established a partnership with specialized institutions in China and in Republic of Korea to strengthen institutional capacities for safeguarding and promoting intangible cultural heritage. We also have example of FAO facilitated hands-on training between China and Samoa partners on fiber reinforced plastic biogas digester in Samoa's contributing to Samoa pathway priority areas on sustainable energy and food security and nutrition. The UNCDF hosted local climate adaptive living locale facility is helping local governments and their communities in SIDS to jointly access the climate finance and assistance they need to address their shared challenges facing climate change. So there are numerous examples to show that UN agencies and the system hold hand in hand with the Global South, with development partners to promote South-South and triangular cooperation. In that spirit, I would welcome, as recommended just yesterday by the UN Resident Coordinator Office at Cape Verde, Mr. Ricardo Gadino, UNDP Chief Technical Advisor of the UN Joint Office in Cape Verde, to share a few comments from their perspective and experiences. So Ricardo, the floor is yours before the conclusion.
Thank you, Madam Wang. I would like to, first of all, give my thanks to the opportunity to present on behalf of the UN Joint Office of Cabo Verde this experience that is a good practice that comes from 2014. With your permission, very quickly, the good practice that I will present is on his second phase. The first phase was started in 2014, and it was a program that is financed by the European Union and was aiming to strengthen the external control of public finance management in 6 countries. 4 of them are SIDS, 5 are Africans. These are known as the PALOP and Timor-Leste countries. The PALOP countries include Angola, Cabo Verde, Guinea-Bissau, Mozambique, São Tomé and Príncipe, and Timor-Leste in Asia Pacific. So 4 of these countries are SIDS. In the first phase, between 2014 and 2017, this program aimed to strengthen the state and non-state actors that are responsible for the external control of public finance management. So we are talking about ministries of finance, court of audits or supreme audit institutions, parliaments, in particular budget committees, and civil society. The assessment that was done at the time is that promoting transparency, economic governance, and accountability would benefit a lot with South-South triangular cooperation approach. So this initiative approached the full holistic budget cycle and public finance management. The actors involved in the first phase were essentially governance institutions, and those governance institutions are the institutions responsible for public finance management. Supreme audit institutions are one of them, parliaments are the others, civil society organizations are others, and working with ministries of finance and plan. The second phase was a scale-up that started in 2019, and the aim was to strengthen economic governance, the system, and public finance management systems. The second phase included the executive Ministry of Finance. From the first phase to the second phase, through the community of practices that this program created and developed, more than 13,000 senior officials were involved in exchanges that were aimed at promoting transformation and change at the level of practices, institutional cultures, legal frameworks, and capacity development. In a first pillar, it was aimed at promoting budget transparency. In a second pillar, it was aimed at promoting external control of public finance. And in the third pillar, it was aimed at promoting legislative and political oversight and social monitoring of budget, public accounts, and public policies related to the execution of the budget that result from the execution of the budget. Today, we are in a point where it was possible to mainstream gender using the full budget cycle and all these actors that were interacting with each other. And it was possible to involve all 6 countries in practices that, that resulted in outcome transformation at the level of governance, economic governance in particular. These transformations go from promoting more transparency by the executive with Ministry of Finance, making available more fiscal information, and this using instruments like budget programming and accrual accounting, promoting audits, concomitant and performance audits targeting SDGs like SDG 5 or SDG 13, among using peers to do so, and using parliamentarians, especially those that are working in budget committees, to enhance their capacity to exert oversight on the executive on expenditures. Civil society through multilateral platforms also is working with us. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Ricardo. Thank you. Also, your last statement addressing a question that is raised by the participant in the Q&A. How about ECOSOC accredited NGOs? How are they involved in promoting the Sustainable Development Goals through South-South cooperation? This is a question from Nigeria to know how these partnerships can be extended to Nigeria. Since we don't have time to really answer this question online, but I would like to let you know that on the South-South Galaxy, if you search by the goals, you will find all the solutions. And if you search by NGO participation, there will be also plenty of examples. And also, I think our partners today would like to follow up on this inclusiveness and innovativeness of partnership in South-South cooperation is indeed a phenomenon in the rising, in the trend today. Thank you very much. Now we are almost, on time for the concluding remarks. I have the honor to again invite Under-Secretary General Mr. Rattray to give us concluding remarks.
Thank you once again, Madam Moderator. I think you've done an excellent job in steering the course of this side event this afternoon. All of the participants today will join me in congratulating the job that you have done. I want to thank everybody here for what I believe has been a very useful and informative side event. I think we've heard a wealth of information on the actions that we as SIDS are currently taking in respect of South-South cooperation. I think it was Ambassador Webson who noted in his opening remarks that we must make a concerted effort to learn from each other, particularly in the wake of COVID, when we are trying to mount effective response and recovery efforts to deal with the pandemic, which, as you all know, has really exposed the vulnerabilities of many developing countries, but particularly the vulnerabilities that exist with respect to SIDS. I think the event has also shown why it is important for us to nurture and develop homegrown solutions and to encourage this sort of inter-SIDS dialogue and exchange so that we can learn from each other. And I think the consensus is that the publication that we have just launched is definitely a step in that direction, or one of the steps in that direction. But as I said at the outset, we do need to do more. I think we heard, I think it was Jofi from Singapore. No, it wasn't. Jofi, I don't want to misquote you, but I think what we need to do is, it may have been Jofi, do more on the front of providing social protection for those that are worst off and that need assistance, in harnessing the power of digitization as well. I definitely remember Jofi saying that we need to put people at the center of our development strategies, and she spoke a little bit about the importance of capacity building and human capital development, you know, nurturing skills development and closing the knowledge gap. And I think she mentioned the importance of the maritime sector to all of SIDS. And I know Singapore is very advanced in terms of its maritime sector, and that is something that I think we can all learn from. My former colleague at the Jamaican mission, Denise, spoke a little bit about what we in Jamaica are doing with respect to our public health efforts, particularly an area of public health that is of relevance to all SIDS because it affects SIDS in a disproportionate way, which is to do with non-communicable diseases and our efforts to mount credible prevention and control strategies to deal with the proliferation of NCDs in our countries. And I think Denise also spoke about what we're doing on climate change and renewable energy. There's so much that was said. I can't go through an exhaustive list of what everybody said, but I just want to close by saying that it is incumbent on us to join forces as SIDS to promote South-South cooperation and cross-regional learning, and to ensure that we actively map what is being done. Some of it is not easily replicable, but it can be replicated if it is properly scaled and adjusted to suit local conditions. And I think it can act as a guidepost for best practices that are relevant for all 6 countries. So, Madam Moderator, I think we have come to the witching hour. You know, our time has elapsed. So let me just thank everybody again, all the people that we heard from the panelists who presented, and all the rich inputs that we heard from members that took the floor at the end of the presentations. Thank you so much. I bid you adieu. Farewell. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you, Mr.
You have to
Ratri.
wave at me, or
Goodbye.
I'm not going to know if you're saying goodbye. Thank you.
We hope to see you all in person very soon. Thank you.
Most
Thank you
people
for a
are off
wonderful
screen, but I'm just going to imagine that I'm hearing applause. So
Yes.
I hear that, Shams. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ratri, to your
Thank you.
excellent team. It's a great partnership. Thank you. Bye, colleagues. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you and goodbye.